You're good on there?
Good to go.
All right, we're gonna call the meeting to order. It's 5:01. I believe everyone is present with one online that's present. Is that correct, Ben?
Yes.
All right, we're gonna start off with public comments. We've got two in here that we'll start with, and then we'll go to the online comments. Austin Todd, first up, you've got 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's see. In the resolution that established this board, one of the purposes for it was to create opportunities to engage the public and ensure good neighbor practices by the airport. I took that as a direct quote out of the resolution. But I hear no conversation concerning improving the airport as a member or partner of this wider community it impacts. Instead of quietly ignoring the issues of noise, then moving on, let's see the board engage and take an active role in developing solutions for the noise and air pollution in this airport. There's never been a serious conversation about landing fees. It's a unilateral move allowed legally that the airport can take. That would have the largest impact in the number of type flight activities that are causing impacts on health, safety, and quality of life. There's never been a discussion installing like microphones and the software system that Centennial uses to monitor noises or the noise down there. That could be a discussion. There's never even a discussion of better marketing and education for the voluntary noise abatement program that RMMA has. And the supposed agreement by the flight schools not to practice between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. The program for the noise abatement, it doesn't even have a link on the front page of the website. There's still a link there for the noise roundtable on the front page, which doesn't exist any longer, but no link to noise abatement. So this board has many opportunities and a mandate to work with the surrounding community to create compromise and solution. It's failing to take action. Thank you.
Thank you. Kirsten.
Hello, I'm Kirsten Freisinger. I'm going to try to speak so everyone can hear me. I'm a 30-year resident, town of Superior. And I was not prepared for this, so I'm going to just shoot from the hip a little bit here. I have been attending these meetings for quite a while now, and Eric Dahl. Hi, Eric. I've emailed you a time or two, as have some people that I know, and we haven't heard anything back. And it was our understanding that the new airport director wanted to engage with the community. And I know it's pretty tough to sit there and read these issues that we feel are coming up, but you know, a response to community and community concerns would be really appreciated. I've been doing screenshots of planes flying over Sandley Lake, and I understand that that is not allowed. I was up the other night, it was last Wednesday night, I think, till 11:30, past 11:30, with a plane doing touch and go operations over my house. Probably 20 or 30 at last count. I ask you to please put yourself in our shoes. The airport was a wonderful neighbor for the 25 of the 30 years that I lived in Rock Creek. I mean, I used to love the planes and I loved the air shows. And that sentiment has changed significantly. And I'd love to see that we could get back to a relationship that was what we once enjoyed. And the airport has lived near the town of Superior for 60 years prior to these issues coming up. And what changed was the installation of 5 flight schools. And that is just overkill. And we are okay with airport traffic, but the flight schools and the pattern work that's done over our homes is pretty brutal. So I'm going to cut it off right there. I could go on and on, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll turn to the online comments.
Actually, it turns out they're not looking to make public comment. They're just putting their,
Okay,
so we're good.
so no public comments online.
Correct.
All right. You all should have received a copy of the board minutes in your packets from July 10th. Entertain a motion to approve, or are there any changes?
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, first up on the business items, airport orientation. We're going to kick off with airport leasing standards and process.
Hi. My name is Brandon Burns. I'm the Director of Finance and Admin here at the airport, so I've been asked to hopefully educate you on the airport leasing standards and process. So I'm gonna go through these standards of our leases. And number one, all leases, of course, must comply with applicable law and the airport's prevailing rates and charges, minimum standards, and rules and regulations. Next, under lease terms, we've got three different categories. Category number one is our hangar ground lease. So the standard term for a ground lease is up to 30 years, plus a 10-year option to extend. We do have a non-standard term where it may be increased to 30 years, plus two 10-year options to extend, which would be a total of 50 years on a lease. But there's a couple things that they have to hit here. So one is the improvements must encompass a minimum of 12,000 square feet, and the entire leasehold must be greater than 1 acre in order to get basically a 50-year lease on that. Category number two. All right. Category number two is county-owned buildings and office space leases. The office space leases is basically the leases that are inside the terminal area. But standard term here is up to 1 year, plus a maximum of 4 one-year options to renew, which could be a grand total of a possible 5 years. Category three are the county-owned T-hangars, also includes porta ports, dedicated parking, which would be tie downs or parking spaces, and then any terminal concessions that are inside here. So standard term for these leases is 1 month, which automatically renew in 1 month renewals. And then it's important to note that the county has the ability to terminate this type of lease at any time with a 30-day written notice. Lease rates. So current lease rates apply to all renewals and extensions and shall be subject to the airport's prevailing rates and charges, the annual consumer price index, which is also known as CPI, and or market rate adjustments. Basically, inside every lease is going to tell you how your rate will adjust, but it could be any of those particular items. But in case anyone is wondering what current ground lease rates are, this is the price per square foot. A non-aeronautical commercial ground lease. So for example, 7-Eleven or Arby's down there on Wadsworth, current rate is $2.13 a square foot. An aeronautical commercial ground lease, so any of the businesses here on the airfield, current rate 71 cents. An aeronautical non-commercial, which would just be your regular general aviation hangar, 67 cents a square foot. And then our FBOs or fixed base operator, they're at 50 cents. And then any aeronautical ground lease that's less than 4,000 square feet is coming in at $1.25. There we go. And then any other rates, so if you're looking for county-owned buildings, office space, T-hangar rates, porta port rates, all those rates can be viewed at this particular link up there right now, which is also on our website. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the flow and how a lease starts from the beginning and then gets fully executed. So all lease applicants must submit the following information. Number one is an application. Got to fill the application out. Number two, they need to provide the airport with a $500 application administration fee. Number three is a copy of an operating agreement. So if the lease is going to be in a business name, we need that copy of the operating agreement to show who has signature authority. And then also if it's in a business name, we need the certificate of good standing. And then the last item there is the certificate of insurance, which we need from everybody. And once we get all of that information, that really starts the flow. So any lease that is greater than 5 years, which is basically a ground lease, a hangar ground lease, this is how it works. So the airport and the county attorney will put together a lease draft for the applicant or the lessee to review. While they are reviewing that, the airport will brief the Board of County Commissioners on this particular new lease. And this is kind of how the way the briefings work. So briefing dates occur only on Tuesdays. And in order to obtain time to brief, the airport has to request from the county manager's office some time for this briefing. Once we obtain that date for that brief, it's required for all briefing materials to be submitted 1 week in advance of that particular briefing date. If the materials are not received 1 week in advance, then we get removed from the briefing agenda. At the end of the briefing, if the Board of County Commissioners agrees with our recommendation for the lease, then it can move forward to a hearing date. Then what the airport does is reserves time on an agenda hearing date to obtain a resolution for the lease. Now, just like briefings, agenda hearing dates only occur on Tuesdays. And so in order to obtain a resolution, the airport must wait at least 1 week after the briefing has occurred to get on a hearing date. And again, like a brief, all agenda hearing materials must be submitted 1 week in advance of the hearing date. And if materials are not received 1 week in advance, you get removed from the hearing date, and it just starts the whole process all over again. But after a resolution's passed, the lease is eligible for signature from the chairman of the county Board of County Commissioners, and then the airport will route the lease by way of a pre-approved memo through the county attorney and then over to the commissioner's office for final signature. For leases less than 5 years, much easier process. Airport and county attorney send the lease to obtain the applicant's signature. And then once we get the signature back, we then route that lease over to the chairman of the board, who then signs it. And that's pretty much it. But there's no briefing, there's no resolution that are required on these short-term 5 years or less leases. Next item, which could be on the agenda. Yep, 2025 airport budget. So first thing I will note is the 2025 budget is currently going through the approval process, and is not expected to be approved until October or November. But given that this is what we have submitted so far, 2025 total operating expenses, we're estimating to come in at $6.6 million. Our total operating revenue, we are projecting to be $7.3 million. So operating net favorable to the airport, just a little over $700,000. That brings us to our next category, which is capital expenses. Right now, $8.2 million we are expecting in total capital expenses. And then we are not I shouldn't say not expecting, we are hoping, but at the particular moment, we have not recognized any grant money or anything to help offset these particular capital expenses. So we could potentially take the full hit on that. But combining the two, the net to the airport, we could take a $7.5 million hit to our fund, potentially. This particular $7.5 million, I'll show you on the next slide here. It's mainly due to one particular item, and that is the $7.7 million slope enhancement project. We are working hard to find some potential grant money for this, and hopefully we'll find out soon if we get some money to help cover this particular project. But at the moment, we don't have it. And then other.
And what is that? What slope is it?
So we have a particular slope that it needs to be enhanced, stabilized to prevent, any any sliding or any particular, that we can.
I guess I can give it,
Yeah.
and so in 2014, 2015, the airport increased the runway safety area off of 1-2 left. It's the big hill, you see off of Colorado 128. Subsequently, that wall was determined to be moving. And there was litigation as part of it. In fact, there was a previous project done earlier to that, that also failed. So clearly there's a history on that hill. So what we're pursuing now is an ultimate engineering fix that will stabilize that hill, hopefully for its whole life cycle this time. But yeah, that's the hill you see.
Had it been improved before?
Yes.
It's a fun little project. Part 150 noise study, that's actually going to kick off, we hope this year, but next year is going to be the big bulk of the work, and then that will actually continue into 2026. So some of the things I think that one of the person made comments hoping that we can do, I think will possibly fall into the noise study, but stay tuned for that. The maintenance building here at the airport needs some new roofing. As always, we have pavement out there that needs repairs. We have a pavement management program, which is what PMP stands for, that we do every year. It's always a minimum of $150,000. If we can get more to add to that, we usually try to do that. The terminal building here needs some new roofing. Northeast development, 15 acres. We have two pads that are, one pad is behind 7-Eleven and Arby's. And then there's another pad that's south of Arby's that are available for anybody to come in and lease and put some sort of business up there. We may have to do some enhancements there for infrastructure, so that's why that number's there. Building B2, which is where HeliQuest and Western Air are, some HVAC needs in that building, and then the project, the East T hangar entrance gate will get replaced next year.
You doing any HVAC in this room?
So
Nope.
came in.
Yeah,
It's hot.
our maintenance guys are working on it. And then I get this question a lot. Next one. What makes up your operating revenue? So basically, it's mostly lease revenue. 68% comes from our leases. And then 18% is our next biggest chunk, and that's a combination between fuel tax revenue and a fuel flow fee that we charge for every gallon of gas that gets pumped. And then 8% comes from interest revenue from the funds that's in our fund balance. And then the remaining 6% is listed as other on this slide. But other could be the long-term parking lot, excuse me, snow removal fees, and then just general small fees here and there.
Maybe the next level, what is our current fund balance?
Current fund balance. So current fund balance today, well, it's projected at the end of this year will be at 14 million. And then after next year, then it goes down. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so about 6 million is where we'll be. We're projected to be there for the next 5 years, around that 6 million mark. But that big jump is because of all these projects happening all at once.
What's
This
your
year and
savings number? What's the number that you like? I know you like the 14 million, but what's kind of that minimum threshold?
My personal minimum threshold is 4 million. And that's just based on what our operating expenses are annually. So my comfort level is about 2/3 of that. So if the worst thing ever happened and we've got no revenues, we'd last, 60% of the year, just got it. Any other questions?
I have a question. Weren't we anticipating somewhere along the lines of $1 million from the FAA based on the JSX traffic? Right around this time, it was supposed to be 2 years, wasn't it? If I recall, and
Yeah,
I think
good
that's right
question.
around now, right?
Yeah, so I think $1 million is the maximum. We'd have to see what the total employment numbers are. But there was a recent discussion not too long ago, and I think that money will come in, we'll actually see that next year. Next
That's
year.
what they said last year. Seriously, yeah.
But it-
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little tricky, but it is a 2-year process, but you have to wait a full year of the employments from that particular JSX in this case, and then it starts after that.
One last question on the Verve property is those, because we're finally getting some traction in sales. Where does that fall? Does that fall into operating revenue or no?
No.
No, okay.
Not an operating revenue. Good question.
So where does it fall?
It's in its own general ledger account.
Contributes to that fund balance, I imagine.
It does, yes.
Can the county terminate 1-year leases in the terminal when they come up for renewal?
Only if they are not in good standing. So if the 1-year lease has 4 more 1-year options remaining, if they're behind in rent, then we could terminate it. Or if some other not good standing item came up, then we could discuss it with our attorneys.
Has that ever happened?
In this lease, or in this terminal, one time. And it was due to, they were 6 months behind in rent. Since I've been, before that, not sure.
Slope issue, is there any expected reimbursement or legal action or anything that's involved in the previous work that was done?
Yeah, there was a legal settlement, with the previous engineer and the sub that designed the geotechnical part of that wall. So yeah, we have some funds to offset that cost, but I'll tell you, it's probably 40% to 50% of the expected cost to fix it.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Thank
Anything
you.
else on the budget?
That's it for now.
All right, thank you. We've got airport updates next.
And I wanted to note before we start those, I missed one other person who was asking for public
Oh,
comment.
okay.
If you want to open it up for that now or at the end, or,
Yeah, we can go ahead and do it now.
Randy Johnson, I am unmuting you and you're giving your public comment.
Johnson. Yeah, my comment will be quick. I live in Laver, south of Chatfield on Highway 85. And I normally give you the numbers. I wrote down 635. That's a lot of planes, not just training planes and all that, jets flying over and everything. And since I'm by Centennial, 18 Centennial complaints, 4 Rocky Mountain. I looked, 3 of them did maneuvers overhead. So that one was loud. But I do want to say why I want to talk is many of the planes, they are spread out, they are high, they are being very good. So I just want to let you know that, the ones that do that. What is very interesting is since the beginning of August or the quarry fire, the plane activity has gone way down. I mean, from just all planes. It's very interesting. I'm really surprised. It's very noticeable. So that's basically all I had. I appreciate you guys letting me call in and listen in. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy.
All right,
All right,
on to updates.
airport updates.
Okay. So these are the same 4 as last month. Some stuff will be new, some stuff will be repetition, but taxiway O and D, Eric gave an update on it last month related to the design and the environmental review that was part of that design. So there was a missing water resource report that our engineer subsequently went and redid or did and has submitted a revised CADX to the FAA. That revised CADX has been approved by the FAA. However, we're waiting for one extra step, which is determination from the Army Corps of Engineers that there is no what they call waters of the US within the study area. We don't expect there to be, but just as a final confirmation that we've done everything we need to do, we're gonna wait on that before we start construction. So that's the environmental part. August 20th, this project goes before the Jeffco Board of County Commissioners for the hearing. for approval of the grant agreement and the construction contract. So assuming that there is a resolution approving that grant agreement and the contract on August 20th, we should have a signed grant with the FAA by September 13th. And we'll discuss with the contractor, the winning contractor, whether construction starts this year or if it's better to wait until 2025 at this point. It'll kind of depend on whether it's worth taking a break for winter or not. Also, I wanted to update because Dr. Wood asked, I did confirm it is not going to be a taxiway O, it's taxiway Kilo. So when those signs actually get installed on the airfield, they'll have K on them. I don't know.
Yeah, Lima.
Or Lima, sorry, there's two, yep. Not to confuse you, but there's two parallels there. So Lima will be the first. So that's all on that project. Moving on, Basin 160. We are kind of in the same situation. We have all our paperwork into the FAA. We expect a final executed grant. It needs to be signed by August 30th, but that project is also going before the Board of County Commissioners on August 20th for a hearing for the board's consideration of the grant agreement and the construction contract. So both of those projects are going before the board on August 20th. And then, yes, we need to have the final signed grant back to the FAA on August 30th on that one. That one, we would like to start construction this fall. It's a water quality and detention project that we need to get done. So that one we expect to start construction in October, hopefully, and September or October, and have that completed before the end of the year. Moving on, unleaded fuel, we are still working through the procurement process on going out to an RFQ for a design firm to just design the infrastructure we need to then go out to bid for the tank and a fuel farm. We're still in that process. And then for the Part 150 study, we have all relevant documents submitted to the FAA at the end of August. It's kind of, or end of July, there's kind of a big push for their grant timelines to have all the necessary paperwork in by end of July. So we were doing that for all three of those major projects. So we expect, similar to that taxiway project, that we will have a signed grant agreement by the Board of County Commissioners before September 13th. However, this one does not have to go back to a hearing because it was the Board of County Commissioners already approved the project and adopted a resolution back in April for the funding for this project. So those are my updates.
And I interrupted you rudely. I apologize. It actually is Kilo. So
Okay.
yeah, you were right.
I trusted the boss, but all right, we're both right. Any questions on project updates?
I have one on the Part 150 study. So when is the actual work gonna begin on that? That actual analysis gonna be work on that? And to address some of the comments from earlier this evening, when is the community engagement? When is the, airport user engagement gonna be happening? Do you have any idea on that yet?
Yeah, I should pull up the scope of work that we have defined and submitted to the FAA, but in my timeline, it's kind of considered to be a 2-year-long study.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can kick it off almost as soon as that grant agreement is signed, September 13th. So we're underway this fall. There is some technical noise modeling. I think there's kind of two ways of public engagement. The consultant goes and does the noise modeling and comes back and checks in with this group and with a public open house and with the Board of County Commissioners or whatever kind of touch points we want to have. And there's response to the noise contours that they show as part of that. And then there's a second body of work that's this development of a noise compatibility plan. So that's another place where I've set and I've put in the scope of work that this board will be included as part of the public engagement is that, but as well as there's a technical group that's formed. So they work on recommendations to address any potential noise impacts. And then those are also vetted in a public process.
I would just hope they would be over communicating what they're finding to us and to the community and everyone. So we can once and for all address facts and data.
I know a good portion of the actual cost of the project is all about community engagement.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of hours spent in the spec to make sure that there is a lot of over communication,
Yeah, cool.
engagement, There were microphones as part of that study? Like, what was the involvement? I know we got the question about it. What was
Yeah,
the,
I'd have to go, read exactly the scope on it, because that's the noise monitors, people often reference Centennial,
Yeah.
but my understanding is their noise monitors was a recommendation from their Part 150 study, and the funding for it was provided by the FAA after the Part 150 study. So it was, okay, you want noise monitors, here's the funding for that, but they had to go through the study first.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
I have a question about the website. Can we make it easier for people to scroll through it to get their answers on the website?
We would love to, yes. Part of that is the staff constraints, and we expect we'll actually be hiring someone who can be more dedicated to that website. But I don't think there's a member on staff who wouldn't agree that we all would like to do tweaks and need to be doing tweaks to that website.
what kind of improvements were you thinking about? You said easier to scroll, but like, do you have kind of like, I know one of them was about outdated links and making sure that the noise abatement plan is more visible. I know House Bill 24-1235, make sure that like the implementation plan of the noise abatement plan is more visible. How we implement noise monitoring is more visible. Those are all things that we have to do in order to comply with that House bill. Certainly those things will be done. I just want to make sure that I'm properly understanding kind of what you're thinking about for the website. So if you have either now or later, or whatever you might have for suggestions.
Okay, we can talk.
Yeah.
Then for the unleaded fuel, you said you're going through the procurement process for the infrastructure. It's my understanding, I think, that there are two main providers of two main types of the unleaded fuel. Are we going through the same process to determine which type to use in parallel, or would that be after we kind of decide infrastructure in that process?
We've had discussions with like some of the larger users of low lead on the field about like what their preference is currently. But I would guess, given the timing it's taking to get a tank in, that I guess in my mind, who knows what the landscape's gonna be 6 months to a year from now in terms of, like, I'm wondering if Swift has 100 unleaded products by then. And then that would probably address a lot of people's concerns about the current availability of Swift 94 UL is like the obvious one right now. I know GAMI is also available, but perhaps more expensive and harder to get delivered here. So yeah, I think we're just kind of ongoing monitoring of that situation, and I think we're happy to have any tenant or aircraft users input right now in terms of what they're feeling and their comfort level of certain fuels.
Yeah, makes sense.
What do planes have to do to adapt to?
So I won't get into this rule, but
Yeah,
there's
just,
a couple different fuels that are available, and becoming available. And some you have to do, specific paperwork, STCs, to be able to put that fuel in your airplane. But that plane has to meet that criteria. A high performance airplane, you can't put it in there. So the 94 UL won't work for certain aircraft. So, but you have to have the STC paperwork to be able to run that fuel. And I know a lot about this. I've done a lot of research, everything like that. So I'd be more than happy to, answer questions on that, even after the meeting. So.
for your average piston plane out here, does it require much modification?
There's no modification. It's either approved for the airplane or it's not.
Just STC.
You get the STC paperwork and you put a sticker by the fuel cap. So that's it. There's no modification to the engines or anything like that, or fuel systems.
Are they all kind of interchangeable? Can you like mix and match them in your fuel tank, or how does that work?
You can mix, if you got an airplane that's approved for 94 UL, you can mix any ratio of 100 low lead and 94 UL that you want. Any ratio is mixable. So if you were using 94 UL here and you flew to another airport in Nebraska and they didn't have it, you could put in the 100 low lead and mix it in any ratio.
That's the same with GAMI too, isn't it? The GAMI.
Yes,
Yeah.
the GAMI, the 100 UL is the same. You can mix it any ratio. Now, the distributors are FBOs, they will only sell that fuel unmixed because they want to have a product that's not blended or changed or anything like that. They're required to sell only that product. So that tank has to be for that product only, and they can't have a variance or a mix. But in the airplanes, we can mix it.
Is there, thinking macroscopically for tenants in the airport, is there any demand for MoGas on the field?
No, it's very rare to have an airplane that's certified for that. I probably see in my maintenance shop, I think 3 airplanes a year that use the MoGas. So I don't think it would be a good option, and I don't think it wouldn't sell. The 94 UL is probably the easiest thing to put into play, but this would be an estimate. Probably 50% of the airplanes on the field could not use it due to the higher horsepower or the restrictions. The 100 UL is the 100%. You could use it. It's just going to be certified for every airplane, every engine. They've done all the testing and everything like that. So that's really the true answer to finally get rid of leaded gas.
Other questions or comments?
I would just love to see this airport be the leader in the state on bringing in unleaded, so that, because, you know I hear a lot of comments from the community, and tell me if I'm wrong, Greg, but I don't think there's an aircraft owner on the field that wouldn't switch to unleaded fuel in a heartbeat, because it's cleaner burning and,
To switching it over.
yeah,
And
we
and
can't
that's
wait.
important. The key factor is the availability of the product. And that's why we're getting the infrastructure in the tanks and getting the grants so we can put this infrastructure in. Once that's there, we can get the fuel. Now, they're still in the process of getting this fuel made. So, the refineries and things like that. So it will be coming down the pipeline. It just takes time to get this in. So I don't know a pilot on the field that won't switch over. We're all looking forward to it. That way we can get rid of the leaded fuels. So I think it's going to be great for the community, great for the airport. And they're talking about helping us subsidize the initial cost because it could be potentially more expensive to, manufacture initially. And then once everything's in play, the infrastructure and all the refineries and everything, then hopefully the prices will be the same as the 100 low lead and there won't be any change as far as cost.
And I do think the airport, buying the dedicated truck and setting aside the land is paving the way to be that leader. But
Yeah, what's quickly dawned on us is like, if you cannot accept the fuel in a full tanker truckload, it's just not anywhere near cost effective for people to use. So hence now the priority on a big tank.
Greg mentioned grants, and I believe I remember reading Centennial got money from the state for unleaded fuel. Are we getting something similar, or is that kind of in the plan or discussions?
I can speak to that unless Eric, unless you had
Go for
a
it.
recent update.
No,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say something you have.
Okay, so yeah, our understanding is the state now is setting aside funds to certain types of airports and certain amounts of funds to different sizes of airports to subsidize actual fuel cost difference between unleaded and leaded fuel for a certain number of years. I'm not sure the exact details on it. So yeah, we understand we'd be eligible for that beginning in 2025. And then they also are a grant funding partner for the actual fuel, the tank infrastructure as well, so along with the FAA.
Have we any idea if other airports throughout Colorado or borderlands are also actively pursuing this as we are?
The unleaded,
Yeah.
Centennial's the main one. They're the ones that are working on that too. So Centennial's kind of started the thing and then we're right behind them as far as following through.
What about Grand Junction, Pueblo, Cheyenne?
To my knowledge, right now, they're not currently working on it.
It's probably gonna be airports that are affected by that House bill for Denver that will be driving that charge, because it's 5 airports, Longmont, Boulder, Erie, us, Centennial, are all the ones that are generally affected by that House bill. And all of us are obligated to have unleaded fuel as fast as we possibly can, an implementation plan by January 1st of 2026, which we should have fuel by then. And that's really what's going to drive Denver to move into unleaded first. Grand Junction and others will eventually get there, but it will be the Denver Metro that will lead the charge on them.
and there are small airports who may be able to offer a Swift 94 UL in like a small quantity. But the amount of fuel we use at this airport, like it's not, it could be a day's use for us. It's not like a realistic source for an airport of this size.
Go back to the tanker full. Is it having a tank to take that large
Yeah.
amount on? And what would it, where would be, you mentioned that the small amounts we go through it in a day. How long would it take us to go through a tanker?
I'd have to go back and do the math, but like, yeah, so we're expecting to procure a 12,000 gallon tank. There's those big trucks you see on the road, those are 8,000 gallon deliveries. I don't know, Brendan, if you offhand know how much we use in 100 low lead a month, but I wouldn't want to guess on a figure on that. Once one of you guys have it. Yeah,
So, but it's the risk ratio of having to front the cash for a tank load.
yeah. Well, and also just the delivery cost is as much as, from what I've been told by wholesalers, as much as $2 to $3 a gallon more. If you accept what they call, I'm forgetting the term of it, but they're basically like these, like what you would see fertilizer distributed in. I think they're maybe 500 gallons, probably less than that.
400 gallon totes.
400 gallon totes, there's the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
Yep.
And a 400 gallon tote of 94 UL on this field, if that's the fuel that we were servicing, would probably last maybe 30 minutes. Because just real quick, mental calculation, equals, so probably I go through maybe 1,000 to 1,200 gallons a day.
Okay.
That's what I'm using. So a tote would last maybe half a day, maybe.
It's gonna be.
For a week.
Yeah, they usually get about 2 trucks a week, I believe.
So it's the tank. Let's get the tank here.
Where do they come from?
There's 2 distributors in the US, one's Salt Lake City and one's Texas. So either the tanker trucks are coming from Texas or Salt Lake City.
Not local, what I could tell currently.
There's no local refineries. I've done a lot of research on it.
You wanted as quick as anyone, right? Any other questions, comments on the airport updates? So I'm gonna add a section in here before we go to confirm next meeting and adjournment. For most of this board, this is now your third meeting. For 2 of you, you've almost hit a year. You'll hit a year in November, and then, of course, John and I have been on a little bit longer. We've intentionally structured these first 3 meetings to be onboarding and orientation and updates to kind of get you familiar, because as you can tell, there's a lot. There's a lot that's happened up to this point. There's a lot that continues to happen, but I want to make sure I open up to you all to make sure that we're hearing and knowing some topics that maybe we haven't touched on yet, or some items that you're still curious. And as we start building out the agenda for the next couple of months from you all as the board, some ideas. And I know one came up last month, which is on my radar, Barbara, with you on the leaded seminar that you teach and talk about, but I'd love to bring in and dedicate some time. But I want to, before we go to the next couple sections, some things that you all would like to have or need to kind of round out as we start rolling up our sleeves and get into a very busy 2025. We want to make sure everybody's kind of got that foundational knowledge to do so.
Well, similar to the leaded presentation, I'd love to have, I don't know if we could get someone like George Braley with GAMI and some muckety muck with Swift. And I know you do a ton of research because that's your livelihood, but I'd love to see if they can give us, right from the horse's mouth kind of analysis on what the potential strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and so forth.
One area I think after the recent fires and stuff, it's just learning more about the capability for firefighting, aircraft, wildfire management, things like that.
The FAA would let them. I think I'd be interested in hearing from some controllers, air traffic control. Just get some of their perspectives on a variety of issues to include noise abatement and traffic operations and things like that. It would be interesting just from their perspective. See.
The controllers are really good. I meet with them once a month and I do this instructors meeting And I always get a briefing either from the tower or they're at the meeting. And they tell procedures and things like that they're talking about doing and things that they're working on. So I think the controllers have got some good information.
How do we get access to the data of the flights?
I missed that access to the,
To data of the flights, timing and et cetera.
Are you talking like the operations of flight schools or? Sure.
Just plain airport operations.
Operation, yeah.
Just wait for somebody to ask me to advise them on something.
all right, anything else? So looking at the calendar, next on the list is the next meeting date. Technically supposed to be on Wednesday, September 11th. I know I will be out of town, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still have it
And I'll be out of town, I'll be out of the country.
on the 11th as well.
I will be out of the country as well. I'm off the grid.
So we will not have quorum on the 11th.
Oh, wow.
We could look to the 18th, or we could cancel September's, but what does the 18th look like?
I can do,
18's good for me.
yeah, I can too.
Okay,
I'm still out of the country, but you won't miss me.
we'll miss you, but we'll have enough to keep going. All right, we will go for the 18th and move from there. Any last comments, thoughts, questions before we adjourn?
I do have one comment. This is the third meeting I've been to and I've come to other ones before in the past. And this is the first time I've been on the board and I'm really proud to be on the board and I'm glad to be here. I hear comments from the town of Superior and different people, but I don't think they're getting their questions answered. I'd like to volunteer if anybody from Superior would like me to stay after this meeting, not associated with the board. I'd be more than happy to answer questions. I've been on the field for 35 years plus. I got a maintenance shop. I own a flight school. I own airplanes. I'm a pilot, instructor. So I know the fuel situations. I know all this stuff. I'd be more than happy to answer questions. For example, somebody asked, why are we flying over Stanley Lake? You know, that wasn't permitted. That's not true. You can fly over Stanley Lake. That's not a restricted airspace. So I think there's some things that people don't understand. And if you guys would like me to, I'd be more than happy to stay after and maybe answer some of these questions so you have a better understanding of how we operate, what we're doing and why we're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Greg. Anything else? All right, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? We are adjourned.